A lot of talk about Jordan Love regression right now, but Jordan Love didn't regress in 2024. His receivers did, and in fact hurt him more than any other quarterback in the NFL.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Jordan Love regression has been a topic of conversation of late. Dan Orlovsky went out of his way to address it and say basically anyone that thinks he regressed does not know ball. We have been all over that on this show for a long time. Going back, I pulled tweets from January, from November, from a long time ago, talking about this. But Warren Sharp had just a bonkers stat. On 3rd and 4th down, Jordan Love last year lost 28.2 EPA due to receiver error, so slips, drops, those kinds of things. That is not just the most in the NFL last season. It is the most EPA lost in that situation by a quarterback since 2020. On all downs, the Packers receivers led the NFL in errors, which caused incompletions. And as Warren Sharp points out, the Packers also faced the 6th toughest schedule of defenses last year. It's why their DVOA was so good when their EPA was just very good. They were an elite offense by DVOA and just a very good one by EPA per play, in part because they played an awesome group of defenses. On all downs, the Packers receivers led the NFL in errors that led to incompletions. On all downs. And on 3rd and 4th down, the most value lost. Forget EPA, forget the numbers. The most value lost on 3rd and 4th down. Now, those are high leverage downs. The most value lost by receiver error since 2020. Remember all the mistakes the Packers receivers made in the beginning of 2023? Remember all of those wrong routes? Guys, in a playoff game, they ran an RPO where no one ran the pass part of the RPO. No one ran a route. Something that happened 2 or 3 times over the course of the regular season as well. That's the kind of the rookie mistakes. Jaden Reed is a rookie. Dontavian Wicks is a rookie. Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, they're rookies. Okay. And Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, they're second-year receivers. They're trying to figure this out. So you would expect the errors in 2023. But the arrow's pointing up. We talked about that a lot on the show, and I've taken a lot of heat on that topic because I was bullish on their progress, and it is a good reminder that progress is not always linear. And in fact, if you start off well as a rookie, it can also be the case that you just top out. Like Romeo Doubs has not gotten materially better year over year since 2022. Christian Watson has not gotten better year over year since 2022. They came into the league being pretty solid players. Like they were pretty solid as rookie players. I think certainly Romeo Doubs got better in 2023 with more opportunities with Jordan Love believing in him. Christian Watson had the health issues. That was the biggest problem for him. But even then, last year, he was pretty healthy until the end of the season. Did not take that big step forward. Jaden Reed took a mini step. Dontavian Wicks took a huge step back, and Jaden Reed's consistency fell off. He produced better high-end flashes, but he was far less consistent. Wicks and Reed among league leaders in drops. That was the set of circumstances. Now, then this just devolves. Because if you point out the drops, then people will say, well, but weren't you saying X, Y, and Z? Yes, I was. And I believe in the merits of those arguments when I made them. I think I had a strong case based on the evidence we had in that moment. And then those players that had showed so much promise went out and peed down their leg all season. Now, they're plenty of flash too, but just in those big moments, 3rd and 4th down. We talked about this recently when we talked about the 3rd and longs and their inability to convert. And the single biggest driver of their failures on 3rd and longs were receiver errors. The tape matches perfectly with what you see in the data. You love it when that happens. And it reminded me of the Lions game. In the rain, at least 4 drops just on 3rd down. And 3rd and manageable, 3rd and 3 in the red zone, Chris Brooks. Still no idea why that wasn't Josh Jacobs, who I still think makes that play. Was it a perfect throw? No. Do you expect an NFL receiver or an NFL player to make that catch? Maybe not a 3rd string running back, which is why you need Josh Jacobs in the game, Matt LaFleur. But then Tucker Kraft just biffs one wide open. Out route, 3rd and manageable even, 3rd and 3. Just biffs it. Dontavian Wicks runs a beautiful route. What else is new? Ball in his hands. Can't haul it in. And then the concept they run a million times. Low red zone. The double cross. Dontavian Wicks is running wide ass open. Jordan Love, yes, puts it on his back shoulder as he's rolling in the rain. Can't make the play. It's a play that you should make as an NFL receiver 98 times out of 100. 96 times out of 100. You should be getting an A on those plays. And I'm not talking about some, nonsense modern education A where you can get an 82 and get an A. No. An old school A. That didn't happen. The players we thought could get better and could elevate this offense didn't. And weirdly, made all the plays. It was like they shot their wad on the Malik Willis run. And they didn't have any of the adversity plays, even the just standard make the freaking catch plays, when Jordan Love was the quarterback. Now, I can't account for that. But what I can tell you is, if Jordan Love had just gotten 2023 productivity from the 2024 team, his numbers probably look just as good. And that's with being hurt. He was still a top 10 quarterback in all the metrics we've talked about, all the metrics I care about, with this huge burden, this yoke around his neck of these receivers that can't make a play for him. You want to call it excuse making? Fine, but it's not. Historic ineptitude on money downs, 3rd and 4th down. No one in the league over the last 4 seasons has seen what he has seen. That's crazy. It's why you go out and you use 2 top picks on receivers. But it's also just the rule of regression to the mean. Yes, the Packers receivers regressed catching the ball last year. I expect them to regress to the mean, which is a more normal level of production this year. And just that alone could legitimately make the Packers the best offense in football, which, by the way, I said they could be last year. And if they had just produced like they did in 2023, they probably would have been, or something close to it. Now, speaking of the Detroit Lions, huge blow to them. Frank Ragnow has retired, and all of a sudden, the top teams in the NFC just a little closer back to the Green Bay Packers as they try and move forward. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Packers. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind. which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. And when you post your job, LinkedIn's new features can help you write job descriptions, then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Frank Ragnow retired from the Detroit Lions at 29 years old. One of the toughest guys in the NFL. Once played with a fractured throat. Could not call out the signals. Had to put together an elaborate system of explanation to Graham Glasgow, who then has to call out the signals. He was someone who set the tone for the Detroit Lions. This is we're talking about a center retiring. I know it seems weird. This is enormous. And it's enormous because the Lions drafted Tate Ratledge, who they probably think can come in and start for them at center. Graham Glasgow at left tackle or left guard, Christian Mahogany at right guard. You could flip them. You could have Glasgow play center. But the offensive line was the superpower of the Detroit Lions. It was what made everything work for them. You want proof positive of that? What did Ben Johnson do immediately when he got to Chicago? Fortified the interior of that offensive line. Paid a premium to do it because he knows not just his offense, no offense works if the middle of your offensive line is not buttoned up. You might have 3 new starters if Graham Glasgow has to change positions in terms of where they have been on this run. The preferred starters, a rookie potentially in Ratledge, Christian Mahogany, who has never been a preferred starter in the NFL. And then you're asking a veteran, but the probably the least good offensive lineman. There's no bad offensive lineman on that team. Graham Glasgow is a solid player, but there's the least good guy you're either going to ask to move or be the anchor of that group for you. That's tough. And then you add in the fact that they lost Ben Johnson, the true engine of that team. And I talked to Matt Derry about it for Locked On Sports Today. Go listen to that conversation if you want to hear more of Matt's perspective on it. But he said he always believed, or at least over the last couple of years, believed that the MVPs of that offense, not Ben Johnson, not Jahmyr Gibbs, not Amon-Ra St. Brown, not Jared Goff, Frank Ragnow and Penei Sewell. Well, now Frank Ragnow is gone. One of your 2 MVPs is gone, and you're trying to transition a first-time play caller into all of that mess. First time with this group, right? He did call plays in New York back in the day, the new Lions offensive coordinator, but it was for 1 season. So this is still going to be a pretty big adjustment, and you're doing it without the continuity of what was either the first or second best offensive line in the NFL. Are you going to be able to run the ball as effectively if you're Detroit? Because that was what you were able to do. Just carve out these lanes and let Jahmyr Gibbs rip off these explosive runs. Well, if you can't do that, is your offense in general going to be as explosive? Does Ben Johnson look like such a genius if the interior of his offensive line is not just gashing defensive fronts to open up lanes for David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs? Or not holding up for 5 seconds if Jared Goff needs that to wait for Jameson Williams to uncover down the field. Now, they probably don't need that much time for Jameson Williams to uncover down the field, but you get the point. That is an enormous amount of flux, an enormous amount of change, of churn, of continuity lost. And when the top of this conference is so jumbled, the Packers, the Lions, the Eagles, the Rams, who knows, maybe the Vikings, who knows, maybe the Cowboys, who knows, who could make a jump up? The Buccaneers, the Falcons, maybe. Those nuances, that lack of continuity is so essential. Now it's also, and one of the reasons why I brought it up was to remind the Packer lens. The Packers are going through a continuity problem of their own. Because Elgton Jenkins is changing positions. You're bringing in a new guard. Now, ostensibly, that's done with the idea of upgrading. Now, you're hoping that Sean Ryan, if he is your starting right guard, then that's continuity, right? And Elgton Jenkins is a longtime starter, has played center, was a center by trade in college. You're upgrading that position almost certainly, but you're probably downgrading from Aaron Banks. Now, if you look at the Pro Football Focus grades, Aaron Banks last year graded out ahead of Graham Glasgow. So now the worst player potentially on the Packers interior is the most reliable at the very least, maybe not the best. We'll see. Player for the Lions, when that was just one of the strengths of their team. Kevin Zeitler had a resurgent season in his mid-30s, and your all-pro center is there. But now he's not. And either is Kevin Zeitler. Packers pieces are more or less the same, just better. And you're adding to it, not subtracting from it, really. But there is a continuity question. I don't know that we can expect this to just go swimmingly from the jump. And Elgton Jenkins not even currently practicing with the team because he's rightfully worried, frankly, about his contract situation. So you're trying to get that stuff worked out while managing all of this. You want to be the team, as I made the case a couple weeks ago, you want to be the team with the continuity. So Elgton Jenkins is a Packer, so you kind of have continuity, right? Like he was on the team, but changing positions, he's going to be lining up next to someone new. He's going to be calling out the signals every week. That is something new. His responsibilities in protections against certain fronts, against certain players, it's going to be new, or at least newish. You hope that those guys know, every spot. He's played every spot. So the adjustment period for him is probably going to be shorter than it would be for most guys. He's a special, special player. Unfortunately, it seems like that injury has robbed him of some of his explosiveness that made him so special earlier in his career. He was projecting like he had a chance to be legitimately like an all-pro kind of, or at least Pro Bowl caliber tackle early in his career. That 2020 when he just is like, no, I just do this now. I'm just the starting left tackle because David Bakhtiari's out. That was special stuff. He's not been quite the same. He's still really good. The Packers have the team to essentially make these teams pay for not getting better and for coming back to the pack. And I mean that in a both literal and metaphorical way, right? They've come back to the Packers. The Packers didn't add any big time talent that we know about yet, right? Like maybe Matthew Golden is, maybe Savion Williams is, maybe Anthony Belton is, maybe Baron Sorrell is, maybe, Colin Oliver is. We don't know yet. Maybe Nate Hobbs is. But those teams have gotten worse. And sometimes all you need is for that to happen. And frankly, all I think the Packers needed last year was to be healthy to at least give that Eagles team a better run for its money. And they look, they had it. It was a one-score game in the fourth quarter. They had the ball with a chance. This is a very talented football team, a very well-coached football team. They have an incredible opportunity this year in a pretty wide-open division. I didn't even mention the Washington Commanders earlier. I should have. They have a terrific opportunity to go contend for a Super Bowl this year. The Lions are more vulnerable than they've been each of the last 2 seasons. The Eagles are more vulnerable, certainly than they were last year. We didn't know the degree to which they were vulnerable in 2023. That was there. That's still a very good team, but they're starting to, feel the crunch of a salary cap, of just the normal player and coaching atrophy. Kellen Moore out of there. The difference between that offense with Shane Steichen and Kellen Moore, and then Brian Johnson in the middle, pretty big. There's a reason you had to fire the one coach to get the other. Shane Steichen gets hired away. It's been pointed out, right, that the last team to fire both their coordinators and move on from an all-pro center won the Super Bowl. That was the Eagles. But they were firing their offensive and defensive coordinators because the team had imploded, not losing 2 outstanding coordinators and having to replace them. That's a big difference. That's a big, dang difference. The Green Bay Packers don't have to deal with that part of this continuity question. All right, it's after June. It's after June 1st. And that has real implications for the stakes in the Jaire Alexander saga. We'll talk about that to close out a Locked On Packers. Thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. As training camp gets closer and moves are being made, host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I wrote about this for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to, but there is a real meaningful deadline here. A deadline is maybe overstating it. But June 1st changes the way moving on from Jaire Alexander affects the Packers. So before, the calculation was, well, if he's going to count $17 million in dead cap if he's gone, yes, you're saving $7 million in money. If he's going to count that much to be gone, then you have to get something for him in a trade, right? Or you need to reduce that cap number. But either way, that's a huge part of what the Packers are trying to deal with here. If you're going to trade him, you need to get something because you have to eat a bunch of money. And maybe it's just better to have him at a lower number, work out a modified deal so that he can be on your team, because having him on your team, even for 7 or 8 games, is better than not having him on your team, especially if you're not going to get the right compensation for it. And Tom Silverstein reported they were close on a trade, but the team trading for Ja could not come to an agreement on a reworked contract. And as such, the compensation that they were offering, they felt like was not commensurate to the deal they were going to have to give Jaire Alexander, the reworked contract. Presumably a pay cut, but still more, I would guess, than what they wanted. Because the more you have to pay, if you're the other team, the more you feel like you have to negotiate the price to the Packers. If you're going to pay Alexander all this money, you feel like you don't want to have to pay the Packers as much to take that problem off their hands. The problem is for the Packers, he was going to cost all that money on them anyway. So that's why when we've been talking about this lately, we've been talking about, hey, just reduce the base salary, turn it into incentives. If he plays, he can get all his money back or something close to it. Or I've said I would even go more, because if he plays all the games, he's worth all the money. But through the beauty of the NFL's mob accounting system, after June 1st, if the Packers were to move on by trade or by release, and remember, you can pre-designate a post-June 1 cut. You can cut someone in, February and designate them a post-June 1, but you don't get the savings until June 1. But you can do the cutting whenever. But you can't do a pre-June 1 trade as a post-June 1. You have to literally wait until after June 1st. So now it's June 3rd. If the Packers were to trade Jaire Alexander, he is only $7 million, 7.5 in dead cap, and saves them 17 in space. That's a big damn deal. Counts 17 or 7 in dead money in 2026. Cap goes up. Who cares? 2 million in 27. Again, that's nothing. That's couch cushion change based on what the salary cap's going to be in 2027. So it's going to be, $1 billion in 2027. Not really, but it's going to be a lot more than it is now. So if the reason you're offering a pay cut is, hey, we'd rather have him on, we'd rather him cost us $14 or $18 million to have on the team versus 17 to not be on the team. Well, now it's 7.5 this year and 7.5 next year to not be on the team. Am I as incentivized to get as much in that trade? No. Now I can justify a little 6th-round pick. That's fine. And maybe that was what the Packers kind of wanted all along, was to wait until after June 1st, maximize the money. It becomes essentially a post-June 1 cut of a player that you're getting something for, but you're waiting to do it until after June 1 because you have to, right? The other part of this is they could just say, look, Ja. I doubt Brian Gutekunst calls him Ja. I really do. But look, man, this is now easier for us. We can just move on from you. So let's negotiate the money down. We could give you away if we wanted to. We could give you away. Now, he wants to be released. But given the cap flexibility for the Packers, if a team wants to come in and offer him something, they can. But it might not be somewhere he wants to go. And he has that leverage. Certainly he's got a big contract. Someone's going to have to want to take that contract. If it's going to be somewhere he's not going to want to be, he's not going to want to come off that money, at least not very much. So I think this amplifies the Packers' ability to say, let's figure this out here. Let's figure this out. And I think now that it's gotten to this point, we still don't have a resolution. I am more open to the possibility of them simply releasing him than I was. I never thought that was on the table. I never thought it made sense. A post June 1 before June 1 doesn't. You explore every trade option you can find. But the Packers offering a revised contract suggests to me they think Jaire Alexander is going to be willing to take it. Because there was a time when that was not the case. When it was reported the Packers had not offered a reduced contract because Jaire Alexander would not take a pay cut. Now it seems like he might. And that's why the Packers would offer it. Because they're like, hey, man, we can figure this out. Well, now the Packers are in an even more advantageous financial position. And I think they can reasonably argue, look, you've seen the market. No one is going to give you anything close to what you're already making. So let's negotiate off that. Because if we cut you, yes, you'll be able to go wherever you want, but you're not going to get the money that is currently on your deal. Let's do the incentive thing. Have you stay here. Jaire Alexander, by all accounts, wants to stay in Green Bay. Plans to show up for mandatory minicamp, according to Packers News. So it seems to me that's the reason that we're headed toward a resolution here. But the Packers' position has only gotten stronger, and I think Jaire Alexander's, frankly, has only gotten weaker, which is why we are allegedly getting closer to a resolution. I guess we will see. More to come this week. We've got a rookie orientation series coming next week. Potentially another big guest coming in next week. Remember, we will have a Monday show, no Tuesday show next week. as I will be en route. I will be traveling. So just want to let you know. But all the regular shows this week as normal. Follow me on the social medias. Follow the podcast on the social medias. Follow the podcast wherever you get podcasts. Over on our YouTube page, you can watch our episodes so you can stay locked on Packers.